was a soldier, a courtier, and a poet. He had a sweet voice and a beautiful face, a noble form, and a very winning address. He was a graceful dancer and excelled in every manly sport. He was wealthy and generous and kind. He was beloved by the rich and by the poor. Now his daimyo, the Lord of Noto, wanted a man to undertake a mission of trust. He chose Tomodatta and called him to his presence. "Are you loyal?" said the daimyo. "My lord, you know it," answered Tomodatta. "Do you love me then?" asked the daimyo. "Aye, my good lord," said Tomodatta, kneeling before him. "Then carry my message," said the daimyo. "Ride, and do not spare your beast. Ride straight, and fear not the mountains, nor the enemy's country. Stay not for storm, nor any other thing. Lose your life, but betray not your trust. Above all, do not look any maid between the eyes. Ride, and bring me word again quickly." Thus spoke the Lord of Noto. So Tomodatta got him to horse, and away he rode upon his quest. Obedient to his lord's commands, he spared not his good beast. He rode straight, and was not afraid of the steep mountain passes, nor of the enemy's country. Ere he had been 3 days, the road the autumn tempest burst, for it was the 9th month. Down poured the rain in a torrent. Tomodatta bowed his head and rode on. The wind howled in the pine tree branches. It blew a typhoon. The good horse trembled and could scarcely keep its feet, but Tomodatta spoke to it and urged it on. His own cloak he drew close about him, and held it so that it might not blow away, and in this wise he rode on. The fierce storm swept away many a familiar landmark of the road, and buffeted the samurai so that he became weary almost to fainting. Noontide was as dark as twilight. Twilight was as dark as the night, and when night fell, it was black as the night of Yomi, where lost souls wander and cry. By this time Tomodatta had lost his way in a wild, lonely place, where, as it seemed to him, no human soul inhabited. His horse could carry him no longer, and he wandered on foot through bogs and marshes, through rocky and thorny tracks, until he fell into deep despair. "Alack," he cried, "must I die in this wilderness, and the quest of the Lord Noto be unfulfilled?" At this moment the great winds blew away the clouds of the sky, so that the moon shone very brightly forth, and by the sudden light Tomodatta saw a little hill on his right hand. Upon the hill was a small thatched cottage, and before the cottage grew 3 green weeping willow trees. "Now, indeed, the gods be thanked," said Tomodatta, and he climbed the hill in no time. Light shone from the chinks of the cottage door, and smoke curled out of a hole in the roof. The 3 green willow trees swayed and flung out their green streamers in the wind. Tomodatta threw his horse's reins over a branch of one of them, and called for admittance into the longed-for shelter. At once the cottage door was opened by an old woman, very poorly but neatly clad. "Who rides abroad upon such a night?" she asked, "and what wills he here? I am a weary traveller, lost and benighted upon your lonely moor. My name is Tomodatta. I am a samurai in the service of the Lord of Noto, upon whose business I ride. Show me hospitality for the love of the gods. I crave food and shelter for myself and my horse." As the young man stood speaking, the water streamed from his garments. He reeled a little, and put out a hand to hold on by the side-post of the door. Come in, young sir," cried the old woman, full of pity. "Come course fare to offer, but it shall be set before you with great goodwill. As to your horse, I see you have delivered him to my daughter." At this, Tomadata turned sharply round. Just behind him, in the dim light, stood a very young girl, with the horse's reins thrown over her arm. Her garments were blown about, and her long, loose hair streamed out upon the wind. The samurai wondered how she had come there. Then the old woman drew him into the cottage and shut the door. Before the fire sat the good man of the house, and the two old people did the very best they could for Tomadata. They gave him dry garments, comforted him with hot rice wine, and quickly prepared a good supper for him. Presently the daughter of the house came in and retired behind a screen to comb her hair and to dress afresh. Then she came forth to wait upon him. She wore a blue robe of homespun cotton. Her feet were bare. Her hair was not tied nor confined in any way, but lay along her smooth cheeks and hung straight and long and black to her very knees. She was slender and graceful. Tomadata judged her to be about 15 years old, and knew well that she was the fairest maiden he'd ever seen. At length she knelt at his side to pour wine into his cup. She held the wine bottle in two hands and bent her head. Tomadata turned to look at her. When she had made an end of pouring the wine and set down the bottle, their glances met, and Tomadata looked at her full between the eyes, for he forgot altogether the warning of his daimyo, the Lord of Noto. "Maiden," he said, "what is your name?" She answered, "They call me the Green Willow." "The dearest name on earth," he said, and again he looked her between the eyes. And because he looked so long, her face grew rosy red from chin to forehead, and though she smiled, her eyes filled with tears. Ah me, for the Lord of Noto's quest! Then Tomadata made this little song. "Long-haired maiden, do you know that with the red dawn I must go? Do you wish me far away? Cruel long-haired maiden, say, long-haired maiden, if you know that with the red dawn I must go, why, oh why, do you blush so?" And the maiden, the Green Willow, answered, "The dawn comes, if I will or no. Never leave me, never go. My sleeve shall hide the blush away. The dawn comes, if I will or no. Never leave me, never go. Lord, I lift my long sleeve so." "Oh, Green Willow," sighed Tomadata. That night he to shake and shiver. My dear, said Tomadata, you shake and shiver, and it is no wonder. The night wind is chill. Come in. And he put his arm around her. At this she gave a long and pitiful cry, very loud and very full of agony, and when she had uttered the cry she failed, and dropped her head upon her love's breast. Tomadata, she whispered, say a prayer for me. I die. Oh, say not so, my sweet, my sweet. You are but weary, you are faint. He carried her to the stream side, where the iris grew like swords, and the lotus leaves like shields, and laved her forehead with water. He said, what is it, my dear? Look up and live. The tree, she moaned, the tree. They have cut down my tree. Remember the green willow. With that she slipped, as it seemed, from his arms to his feet, and he, casting about himself upon the ground, found only silken garments, bright coloured, warm and sweet, and straw sandals, scarlet thonged. In after years, when Tomadata was a holy man, he travelled from shrine to shrine, painfully upon his feet, and acquired much merit. Once, at nightfall, he found himself upon a lonely moor. On his right hand he beheld a little hill, and on the sad ruins of a poor thatched cottage. The door swung to and fro, with broken latch and creaking hinge. Before it stood 3 old stumps of willow trees that had long since been cut down. Tomadata stood there for a long time, still and silent, and then he sang gently to himself. Long-haired maiden, do you know that with the red dawn I must go? Do you wish for me far away? Cruel long-haired maiden, say, long-haired maiden, if you know that with the red dawn I must go. Why, oh why do you blush so? Ah, foolish song, the gods forgive me, and should have recited the Holy Sutra for the dead, said Tomadata. Oh, sad little story. There has been a little bit of an outfit change as I had to split this video over 2 days, so no judgment. The next story is called The Flute. Long since there lived in Yedo a gentleman of good lineage and very honest conversation. His wife was a gentle and loving lady. To his secret grief, she bore him no sons, but a daughter she did give him, whom they called Oyone, which, being interpreted, is rice in the ear. Each of them loved this child more than life, and guarded her as the apple of their eye. And the child grew up red and white, and long-eyed, straight and slender as the green bamboo. When Oyone was 12 years old, her mother dropped with the fall of the year, sickened and pined, and ere the red had faded from the leaves of the maples, she was dead and shrouded and laid in the earth. The husband was wild in his grief. He cried aloud, he beat his breast, he lay upon the ground and refused comfort, and for days he neither broke his fast nor slept. The child was quite silent. Time passed by. The man perforce went about his business. The snows of winter fell and covered his wife's grave. The beaten pathway from his house to the dwelling of the dead was snow also, undisturbed save for the faint prints of a child's sandaled feet. In the springtime he girded up his robe and went forth to see the cherry blossom, making merry enough, and writing a poem upon gilded paper, which he hung to a cherry tree branch to flutter in the wind. The poem was in praise of the spring and of Saki. Later he planted the orange lily of forgetfulness, and thought of his wife no more, but the child remembered. Before the year was out, he brought a new bride home, a woman with a fair face, her father loved Oyone, her stepmother hated her with a jealous and deadly hatred, and every day she dealt cruelly by the child, whose gentle ways and patience only angered her the more. But because of her father's presence, she did not dare to do Oyone any great ill, therefore she waited, biding her time. The poor child passed her days and nights in torment and horrid fear. But of these things she said not a word to her father. Such is the manner of children. Now after some time it chanced that the man was called away by his business to a distant city. Kyoto is the name of the city, and from Yedo it is many days' journey on foot or on horseback. Howbeit, go the man needs must, and stay there 3 moons or more. Therefore he made ready and equipped himself and his servants that were to go with him with all things needful, and so came to the last night before his departure, which was to be very early in the morning. He called Oyone to him and said, "Come here then, my dear little daughter." And so Oyone went and knelt before him. "What gift shall I bring you home from Kyoto?" he said. But she hung her head and did not answer. "Answer then, rude little one," he bade her. "Shall it be a golden fan, or a roll of silk, or be a new obi of a red brocade, or a great battle door with images upon it, and many light feathered shuttlecocks?" Then she burst into bitter weeping, and he took upon his knees to soothe her. But she hid her face with her sleeves, and cried as if her heart would break. And, "Oh, father, father, father," she said, "do not go away, do not go away." "But, my sweet, I needs must," he answered, "and soon I shall be back, so soon, scarcely it will seem that I am gone, and when I shall be here again with fair gifts in my hand." "Father, take me with you," she said. "Alas, what a great way for a little girl! Will you walk on your feet, my little pilgrim, or mount a pack horse? And how would you fare in the inns of Kyoto? Nay, my dear, stay. It is but for a little time, and your kind mother shall be with you." She shuddered in his arms. "Father, if you go, you will never see me more." Then the father felt a sudden chill about his heart that gave him pause. But he would not heed it. What must he, a strong man grown, be swayed by a child's fancies? He put Oyone gently from him, and she slipped away as silently as a shadow. But in the morning she came to him before sunrise with a little flute in her hand, fashioned of bamboo and smoothly polished. "I made it myself," she said, "from a bamboo in the grove that is behind our garden. I made it for you, as you cannot take me with you. Take the little flute, honourable father. Play on it sometimes, if you will, and think of me." Then she wrapped it in a handkerchief of white silk, lined with scarlet, and wound a scarlet cord about it, and gave it to her father, who put it in his sleeve. After this he departed and went his way, taking the road to Kyoto. As he went, he looked back thrice, and beheld his child standing at the gate, looking after him. Then the road turned, and he saw her no more. The city of Kyoto was passing great and beautiful, and so the father of Oyone found it, and what with his business during the day, which sped very well, and his pleasure in the evening, and his sound sleep at night, the time passed merrily, and small thought he gave to Yedo, to his home, or to his child. 2 moons passed, and 3, and he made no plans for return. One evening he was making ready to go forth to a great supper of his friends, and as he searched in his chest for certain brave silken his servant, and told him he would not go forth that night. He was not well, he would be alone. After a long time he reached out his hand for the flute. Again that long, melancholy cry. He shook from head to foot, but he blew into the flute. Come back to Yedo, come back to Yedo, father, father. The quavering, childish voice rose to a shriek and then broke. A horrible foreboding now took possession of the man, and he was as one beside himself. He flung himself from the house and from the city, and journeyed day and night, denying himself sleep and food. So pale was he and wild that the people deemed him a madman, and fled from him, or pitied him as the afflicted of the gods. At last he came to his journey's end, travel-stained from head to heel, with bleeding feet and half dead of weariness. His wife met him at the gate. He said, "Where is the child?" "The child," she answered. "Aye, the child, my child. Where is she?" he cried in agony. The woman laughed. "Nay, my lord, how should I know? She is within at her books, or she is in the garden, or she is asleep, or maybe she has gone forth with her playmates, or—" He said, "Enough, no more of this. Come, where is my child?" Then she was afraid, and "In the bamboo grove," she said, looking at him with wide eyes. Then the man ran and sought Oyoni among the green stems of the bamboo, but he did not find her. He called, "Yoni, Yoni," and again, "Yoni, Yoni," but he had no answer. Only the wind sighed the dry bamboo leaves. Then he felt in his sleeve and brought forth the little flute and tenderly put it to his lips. There was a faint sighing sound. Then a voice spoke, thin and pitiful. "Father, dear father, my wicked stepmother killed me. 3 moons since she killed me. She buried me in the clearing of the bamboo grove. You may find my bones. As for me, you will never see me anymore. You will never see me more." With his own 2-handed sword, the man did justice and slew his wicked wife, avenging the death of his innocent child. Then he dressed himself in coarse white raiment, and with a great rice straw hat that shadowed his face. And he took a staff and a straw raincoat, and bound sandals on his feet. And thus he set forth upon a pilgrimage to the holy places of Japan. And he carried the little flute with him in a fold of his garment upon his breast. That was quite a sad little one. I thought it was going to be happier than that. There is another one called the Tea Kettle. Long ago, as I've heard tell, there dwell at the temple of Marinji, the province of Kosuke, a holy priest. Now there were 3 things about this reverend man. First, he was wrapped up in meditations and observances and forms and doctrines. He was a great one for the sacred sutras and knew strange and mystical things. Then he had a fine, exquisite taste of his own, and nothing pleased him so much as the ancient tea ceremony of the cha no yu. And for the third thing about him, he knew both sides of a copper coin well enough, and loved a bargain. None so pleased as he when I'll give you 3 rin for it. This he did, and took the kettle home, rejoicing, for it was of bronze. Fine work, the very thing for the Chan o you. A novice cleaned and scoured the tea kettle, and it came out as pretty as you please. The priest turned this way and that, and upside down, looked into it, tapped it with his fingernail. He smiled. A bargain, he cried, a bargain, and rubbed his hands. He set the kettle upon a box, covered over with a purple cloth, and looked at it so long that first he was fain to rub his eyes many times, and then to close them altogether. His head dropped forward, and he slept. And then, believe me, the wonderful thing happened. The tea kettle moved, though no hands were near it. A hairy head with 2 bright eyes looked out of the spout. The lid jumped up and down. 4 brown and hairy paws appeared, and a fine bushy tail. In a minute the kettle was down from the box, and going round and round, looking at things. A very comfortable room, to be sure, says the tea kettle. Pleased enough to find itself so well lodged, it soon began to dance, and to caper nimbly, and to sing at the top of its voice. 3 or 4 novices were studying in the next room. The old man is lively, they said, only to hark him. Where can he be at? And they laughed in their sleeves. Heaven's mercy, the noise that the tea kettle made, bang, bang, thud, thud, thud. The novices soon stopped laughing. One of them slid aside the karakami and peeped through. Arrah, the devil and all's in it, he cried. Here's the master's old tea kettle turned into a sort of badger. The gods protect us from witchcraft, or for certain we shall be lost. And I scoured it not an hour since, said another novice, and he fell to reciting the Holy Sutras on his knees. A third laughed. I'm for a nearer view of the hobgoblin, he said. So the lot of them left their books in a twinkling, and gave chase to the tea kettle to catch it. But could they come up with the tea kettle? Not a bit. It danced, and it leapt, and it flew up in the air. The novices rushed here and there, slipping upon the mats. They grew hot. They grew breathless. Ha 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 ha, laughed the tea kettle. Catch me if you can, laughed the wonderful tea kettle. Presently the priest awoke, all rosy, the holy man. And what's the meaning of this racket, he says, disturbing me at my holy meditations and all? Master, master, cries the novices, panting and mopping their brows. Your tea kettle is bewitched. It was a badger, no less. And the dance it has been giving us, you'd never believe. Stuff and nonsense, says the priest. Bewitched, not a bit of it. There it rests, on the box. Good, quiet thing, just where I put it. Sure enough, so it did, looking as hard and cold and innocent as you please. There was not a hair of a badger near it. It was the novices that looked foolish. As likely story indeed, says the priest. I have heard of the pestle that took wings to itself and flew away, parting company with the mortar. That is easily to be understood by any man. But a kettle that turned into a badger, no, no. To your books, my sons, and pray to be preserved from the perils of illusion. That very night, the holy man filled the kettle with water from the spring, and set it on the hibachi to boil for his cup of tea. When the water began to boil, aye, aye, the kettle cried, aye, aye, the heat of the great hell, and it lost no time at all, but hopped off the fire as quick as you please. mercy on me. Help, help, help. He was frightened out of his wits, the dear good man. All the novices came running to see what was the matter. The tea kettle is bewitched, he gasped. It was a badger, assuredly it was a badger. It both speaks and leaps about the room. Nay, master, said a novice, see where it rests upon its box. Good, quiet thing. And sure enough, so it did. Most reverend sir, said the novice, let us all pray to be preserved from the perils of illusion. The priest sold the tea kettle to a tinker and got for it 20 copper coins. It's a mighty fine bit of bronze, says the priest. Mind, I'm giving it away to you. I'm sure I cannot tell what for. Ah, he was the one for a bargain. The tinker was a happy man and carried home the kettle. He turned it this way and that, and upside down. He looked into it. A pretty piece, says the tinker, a very good bargain. And when he went to bed that night, he put the kettle by him to see it bursting in the morning. He awoke at midnight and fell to looking at the kettle by the bright light of the moon. Presently it moved, though there was no hand near it. Strange, said the tinker, but he was a man who took things as they came. A hairy head with 2 bright eyes jumped out of the kettle's spout. The lid jumped up and down. 4 brown and hairy paws appeared, and a fine bushy tail. It came quite close to the tinker and laid a paw upon him. Well, says the tinker. I am not wicked, says the tea kettle. No, says the tinker, but I like to be well treated. I am a badger tea kettle. So it seems, says the tinker. At the temple they call me names, and beat me, and set me on fire. I couldn't stand it, you know. I like your spirit, says the tinker. I think I shall settle down with you. Shall I keep you in a lacquer box, says the tinker. Not a bit of it. Keep me with you. Let us have a talk now and again. I am very fond of a pipe. I like rice to eat, and beans, and sweet things. A cup of sake sometimes, says the tinker. Well, yes, now you mention it. I'm willing, says the tinker. Thank you kindly, says the tea kettle. And as a beginning, would you object to me sharing your bed? The night has turned a little bit chilly. Not the least in the world, says the tinker. The tinker and the tea kettle became the best of friends. They ate and talked together. The kettle knew a thing or two and was very good company. One day, are you poor? Says the kettle. Yes, says the tinker, middling poor. Well, I have a happy thought. For a tea kettle, I am out of the way, really very accomplished. I believe you, says the tinker. My name is Bambuku Chagama. I am the very prince of badger tea kettles. Your servant, my lord, says the tinker. If you'll take my advice, says the tea kettle, you'll carry me round as a show. I really am out of the way, and it's my opinion you'd make a mint of money. That would be hard work for you, my dear Bambuku, says the tinker. Not at all. Let us start forthwith, says the tea kettle. So they did. The tinker bought hangings from a theatre, and he called the show Bambuku Chagama. How the people flocked to see the fun, for the wonderful and most accomplished tea kettle danced and sang and walked the tightrope as to the manner born. It played such tricks and had such droll ways that the people laughed till their sides ached. It was a great treat to see the tea kettle bow as gracefully as a lord and thank the people for their patience. The bambuku chagama was the talk of the countryside, and all the gentry came to see it as well as the commonalty. As for the tinker, he waved a fan and took the money. You may believe that he grew fat and rich. He even went to court, where the great ladies and the royal princesses made much of the wonderful tea kettle. At last the tinker retired from business, and to him the tea kettle came with tears in his bright eyes. I'm much afraid it's time to leave you, it says. Now don't say that, Bambuku dear, says the tinker. We'll be so happy together now we are rich. I've come to the end of my time, says the tea kettle. You'll not see old Bambuku any more. Henceforth I shall be an ordinary kettle, nothing more or less. Oh, my dear Bambuku, what shall I do? Cried the poor tinker in tears. I think I should like to be given to the temple of Marinji as a very sacred treasure, says the tea kettle. It never spoke or moved again. So the tinker presented it as a very sacred treasure to the temple, and the half of his wealth with it, and the tea kettle was held in wondrous fame for many a long year. Some persons even worshipped it as a saint. I will do one more story called The Star Lovers. All you that are true lovers, I beseech you pray the gods for fair weather upon the 7th night of the 7th moon. For patience' sake, and for dear love's sake, pray and be pitiful, that upon that night there may be neither rain, nor hail, nor cloud, nor thunder, nor creeping mist. Hear the sad tale of the star lovers, and give them your prayers. The weaving maiden was the daughter of a deity of light. Her dwelling was upon the shore of the Milky Way, which is the bright river of heaven. All the day long she sat at her loom and plied her shuttle, weaving the gay garments of the gods. Warp and woof, hour by hour the coloured web grew, until it lay fold on fold, piled at her feet. She never ceased her labour, for she was afraid she had heard a saying, sorrow, age-long sorrow, shall come upon the weaving maiden when she leaves her loom. So she laboured, but the gods had garments to spare. But she herself, poor maiden, was ill clad. She recked nothing of her attire or of the jewels that her father gave her. She went barefoot and let her hair hang down unconfined. Ever and anon a long lock fell upon the loom, and back she flung it over her shoulder. She did not play with the children of heaven, or take her pleasure with celestial youths and maidens. She did not love or weep. She was neither glad nor sorry. She sat weaving, weaving, and wove her being into the many-coloured web. Now her father, the deity of light, grew angry. He said, daughter, you weave too much. It is my duty, she said. At your age to talk of duty, said her father, out upon you. Wherefore are you displeased with me, father? She said, and her fingers plied the shuttle. Are you a stalk or a stone or a pale flower by the wayside? Nay, she said, I am none of these. Then leave your loom, my child, and live. Take your pleasure, be as others are. And wherefore should I be as others are? She said. Never dare to question me. Come, will you leave your loom? She said, sorrow, age-long sorrow, shall come upon pleasure with the celestial youths and maidens. Lightly she went, her feet were shod with silver. Her lover, the haired boy, held her hand. She laughed so that the very gods laughed with her, and high heaven re-echoed the sounds of mirth. She was careless, little did she think of duty. Or of the garments of the gods. As for her loom, she never went near it, from one moon's end to another. I have my life to live, she said. I'll weave it into a web no more. And the haired boy, her lover, clasped her in his arms. Her face was all tears and smiles, and she hid it on his breast. So she lived her life, but her father, the deity of light, was angry. It is too much, he said. Is the girl mad? She will become the laughing-stock of heaven. Besides, who is to weave the new spring garments of the gods? 3 times he warned his daughter. 3 times she laughed softly and shook her head. Your hand opened the door, my father, she said, but of a surety no hand either of God or of mortal can shut it. He said, you shall find it otherwise to your cost, and he banished the haired boy forever and ever to the farthest side of the bright river. The magpies flew together from far and near, and they spread their wings for a frail bridge across the river, and the haired boy went over the frail bridge, and immediately the magpies flew away to the ends of the earth, and the weaving maiden could not follow. She was the saddest thing in heaven. Long, long she stood upon the shore, and held out her arms to the haired boy, who tended his oxen desolate and in tears. Long, long she lay and wept upon the sand. Long, long she brooded, looking on the ground. She arose and went to her loom. She cast aside the cloth that covered it. She took her shuttle in hand. Age-long sorrow, she said, age-long sorrow. Presently she dropped the shuttle. Ah, she moaned, the pain of it, and she leaned her head against the loom. But in a little while she said, yet I would not be once as I was. I did not love or weep. I was neither glad nor sorry. Now I love and I weep. I am glad and I am sorry. Her tears fell like rain, but she took up the shuttle and laboured diligently, weaving the garments of the gods. Sometimes the web was grey with grief, sometimes it was rosy with dreams. The gods were fain to go strangely clad. The maiden's father, the deity of light, was for once well pleased. That is my good, diligent child, he said. Now you are quiet and happy. The quiet of dark despair, she said. Happy, I am the saddest thing in heaven. I am sorry, said the deity of light. What shall I do? Give me back my lover. Nay, child, that I cannot do. He is banished for ever and ever by the decree of a deity. That cannot be broken. I knew it, she said. Yet something I can do. Listen. On the 7th day of the 7th moon, I will summon the magpies together from the ends of the earth, and they shall be a bridge over the bright river of heaven, so that the weaving maiden shall lightly cross to the waiting haired boy on the farther shore. So it was. On the 7th day of the 7th moon came the magpies from far and near, and they spread their that is it for the second installment of the Japanese fairy tales. Like I said,